Oh, hello, world. Technical difficulties. Welcome to Comic Book News. I'm your old pal, Dan Shaheen. Got an exciting show for you today. I just read an awesome graphic novel called Everyone Is Tulip. You haven't read it because it's not out yet. Yeah, that's right. I got that kind of juice. I get to read comics that you can't. Like, you got to know somebody. I know somebody. I know Davey Baker and Nicole Goux. Nod, Nicole. Is that right? No? Okay. I should have asked before. So when we bring her in, I'll find out how to pronounce her name. It's one of those weird ones with an X in it. So we're going to talk to her. We're going to talk to Dave. We're going to talk about their amazing oeuvre in comics. They don't have one comic to promote. They got a ton of comics. I'm looking at Nicole's website, and it's like comic after comic after comic, getting better and better and better by these guys as a team, right? So I don't know how long they've known each other. We're going to find out. We're going to talk to them all about what got them to this level. I mean, they're producing for multiple indie comics companies. Dave said they're indie darlings. I'm going to go with that. I like that. They are. But wait, before that, a little bit of show business, right? What else? We've got some more shows coming up this week. I got at least one other show. Somebody you might have heard of. I don't know. On Thursday, we're going to talk to this dude named Brian Hitch. He's pretty cool. He drew some pretty cool stuff. Still draws pretty cool stuff. And just a heck of a dude. It's been hard. It was hard for me to track him down and find a time that would work. But I think we've got it. And then, wow, who do we got after that? In the following week, I just scheduled Mark Evanier. How exciting is that? We'll talk to the Goux guy, the Garfield guy, the News from ME guy. He's at the epicenter of comics from way early back. The Jack Kirby's assistant guy. So much to talk about with Mark. And he agreed to come in here, and that's super cool of him. I appreciate that. Okay, what else have we got? Oh, man, if you want to see your comics, you don't have to be published by one of these big, you don't have to be an indie darling to have your books on this show. Just send your comics to, hey, the $1 Million Mailbox. P.O. Box 1163, Arcata, California, 95518. And you get to see it on the show. It's so exciting. I bring in Larry Young from AIT Planet Lair. I've read the comics. He hasn't. And I sort of pitch them to him. And he gives his unvarnished professional opinion. It's exciting. We've even got a theme song.
Who's in the $1 Million Mailbox? One guess who? Who'd never ever start an argument? Who'd never show a bit of temperament? Who's never wrong but always right? Who'd never dream of starting a fight? Who's on your screen with the comic book scene? No one but Dan Shaheen.
How exciting is that? Extremely. So send your comics in. You know I want to see them. You know we'll give them a fair shot. You know that we will look at them in the $1 Million Comics cam. Today we're going to have to settle for the $1 Million PDF cam because Everyone Is Tulip is still being printed in some far-off land. It's probably on a container ship as we speak, making its way towards the States. So let's do what we can to look at it and talk about it. Let's bring in the creators. Let's bring in Davey Baker.
Hey.
And I'm just going to call her Nikki G. Nikki? Nicole?
Yes! That's what I call her. Yes,
okay.
Nikki G!
That works.
How do you pronounce your name? I'm really sorry. I forgot to ask.
That's okay. It's just Goux. X is silent.
Goux.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool. All right. I like it. Love it. Even. Like Rue.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
how I remember it. Okay. Okay. Like a Rue. Great. Well, this comic is how can I transition to this? This comic was started with a base of flour. I don't know how I work Rue into this thing. But okay, here we go. The basic ingredients you guys have been working on for a long time, because you've been working. You can't put out a comic this fully formed and this professional. I'll just say it. I'll just put it that way, without having a lot of pages under your belt. So why don't you guys tell me, how did you get started making comics?
Dave, do you
Nicole?
Okay, yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, I mean, I've been self-publishing since I was a kid. I made comics in high school and college. The number I always say is like, I've made 12 graphic novels. I don't know if that's true, but I've made a lot. And there's at least 3 volumes of Action Hospital, the book that I co-draw and write. Each one of them is 300 pages, and that's how Nicole and I met. Is the first volume of Action Hospital. If anybody doesn't know, it's kind of like a high concept kind of action adventure comic set inside a hospital that services people with otherworldly needs or extreme maladies. So it's about like superpowered doctors and nurses, but also it's really just like a character piece of like people being sad and not liking their jobs and wanting to be artists and failing. So the way the first book in that series is structured is that I write all the stories, and they're all probably 10 to 20 page stories, but each character in the hospital that stars in those various stories, they're always drawn by a different artist. So and then
if that's in here.
Might be in the shop.
Oh yeah.
In the shop? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But so basically there it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
Up a little.
One more. There you go. Yeah.
Awesome.
And so, each, like I drew that image. I did the cover, and I draw the main character, who's the girl dead center with the kind of strange high top fade mohawk thing. I like weird hairdos. So that we met because I was like, hey, you want to make some comics? And Nicole was like, no, not really. And I was like, no, come on. It'll be fun. It's low investment. And I guess, Nicole, you can take it from there.
Yeah, so I went to art school and majored in illustration and had no plan to draw comics ever. Because I read a lot of manga when I was a preteen and a teen, and, newspaper comics for years and years and years. But I was never into American comics, and I kind of didn't see that other than, when I was 12, wanting to move to Japan and be a mangaka. And then, I met Dave after school, and he asked me if I wanted to make comics, and I was like, no, not really. But I had some free time. I think I was maybe in between jobs, and we started doing just like an 8-page comic for Action Hospital, and we did that. And I kind of fell in love with it, and we've been hanging out and making comics ever since.
Yeah, how great is that? Like, I love that we've got now this whole generation of cartoonists who are like, Jack Kirby, who? What? What? Like, I know Osamu Tezuka, right? And I know whatever I know, and that's not to say that it's good. One is better than the other, either way. But it's just to say there's just this whole world of comics that many, many cartoonists now are just getting exposed to the full breadth of what you can do in comics. Yeah. I think it's amazing. So how did you go? So you guys, where are you guys located then and now? right? When you guys first met, were you geographically
Yeah, we both
synchronous?
live in Los Angeles. I was living in LA Central, like actual LA at the time, and Nicole was living in Huntington Beach. But now she's been persuaded, and she too lives in Los Angeles.
I do. Yeah, I went to school in Long Beach, so I was kind of a little further south, and then moved my way up here.
I'm just bringing up some of your stuff from your website. It's really nice looking stuff.
Oh,
Really
yeah,
nice website and great illustrations.
That's probably the first long form book we did, and it's called Suicide Forest. And the format is that the entire book is one background, one spread through the whole book, and then the characters move around on the page.
Great.
So it kind of works.
Awesome.
People say it's kind of like a flip book or an animation, which isn't completely accurate, but it's kind of a nice shorthand to understand how it works.
Very cool idea. I don't think I've seen that before in a long form comic anyway.
Yeah,
Really
yeah.
cool.
I mean, it's like 100 and some odd pages where it's that background with people moving around and doing stuff. And it's kind of a horror story, kind of a home invasion-y, spooky.
Oh, that's perfect then.
Yeah, yeah. It's inspired by John Carpenter and Haneke. Funny Games is basically it's like, what if the shot in air quotes shot in Funny Games was the entirety of Halloween, so it's this kind of masked assailant character breaking into a house and causing havoc, and it's all from one lockdown shot.
Really cool. It's kind of like what they call a bottle film, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like one location. This can be really effective. I don't think I've seen it in comics. I think that's cool.
Yeah, yeah. The that term bottle episode that comes from Star Trek, and we're both Star Trek kids.
There's a couple Star Trek references, at least one that I caught in Everyone Is Tulip too.
Yeah.
So we should talk about that when we get there. I just wanted to show this. We're not going to go through all your previous works. I'm just going to show, Nicole, you've been around the block. You've done a lot of projects, and you guys together have done quite a bit as well. Gem and the Holograms. How cool. My wife is
that was a fun anthology book where I wrote and drew a 10-page story for that one. And Rebecca Nolte colored it, and she did a great job. I was so happy with that.
Looks really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Looks really nice. Looks better than that crappy show looked. I was going to say that.
Yeah. And we actually got to do a Star Trek book.
Amazing. Tell me about that.
Yeah, we did. They have a Star Trek anthology called Waypoint, where they do little short stories, kind of continuity free, about various people in Star Trek canon. And we did a story about Ezri Dax, who is the season 7 Trill from Deep Space Nine. Which, if you're not a Star Trek person, I've just spoken another language to you. But yeah, that's a kind of story about like a weird imagined future of what she's doing after the end of DS9. And I wrote it, Nicole drew it, Mikel Muerto colored it, and yeah, it's I think it came out pretty well. And that actually was the launching pad for me to do a mini series at IDW. I did a Star Trek Voyager 4-issue miniseries called Seven's Reckoning.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Fantastic. Yeah. So you guys have been working together, doing stuff. Look at this. Nicole published by, you got DC, you got IDW, now you got Dark Horse. Mm-hmm. Who's left on your list? When are you going to Fantagraphics? When are you going to go to...
Yeah, I know, right? We gotta go to Image, we gotta go to Fantagraphics.
Our next book that's coming out next year in 2022 will be from Simon & Schuster.
Yeah, fuck these comic book publishers, am I right?
Ooh la la, ooh la la. Everybody's jumping to the majors. I've seen Noah Van Sciver's next book coming out is going to be from, I think Penguin. No, Harry Abrams.
Oh, yeah.
Jason Shiga, I know did stuff for Abrams. Joe Sacco's last book. Nobody's dancing with who brung them. to the dance anymore. You know what I mean? Like there's just,
I mean, I don't begrudge that at all. Most comic book publishers, while I love them and I'm a dyed-in-the-wool comic book person, most comic book publishers are like literally a guy. Like the comic book publisher that published our first book, Fuck Off Squad, run by Avi Ehrlich, a single person. The whole company is a single person. The company that's publishing my book right now with Alexis Zirrit, Night Hunters, Floating World, a guy, Jason. It's a dude. Like,
yeah.
Like
That's kind of what's amazing about comics, though, right? Is that literally it often comes down to one person can do something that, you know, millions of dollars and huge teams of people cannot recreate the magic. I think the perfect example. Have you guys watched Jupiter's Legacy on Netflix?
I don't partake in anything Mark Miller. Thank you, though.
Woo! Well, I do. I'm a big fan. I think Mark Miller's one of the best and most important writers in comics in the last 20 years for sure. You can argue with me about that.
I mean, we don't have to get into this debate, but I highly disagree.
No, totally. No, totally. I mean, I don't like every one of his comics, but I like a lot of them. A lot of them were really great, sold great. I enjoyed a lot, you know. And Jupiter's Legacy was one of them. Who doesn't like Frank Quitely's artwork? I love it.
Yeah, he's the GOAT.
Right. So take one guy with his pen and put it up against, I don't know how much they spent on costumes and special effects for this show, but I'll bet you it's millions of dollars.
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, 100%.
Right. And it looks like something out of Sid and Marty Krofft, like Electra Woman and Dinah Girl.
But the funny thing about it is, if it actually looked like that, I would love it. I would actually watch it if it looked like that. The problem is it's trying to be something else. And it's just like settling into that area.
I feel like they had the special effects, like they half baked them. They're just like, wow, this is good enough. Like, I don't know. Anyway, we're not here to talk about those comics or that show.
I mean, we could. It could just be 2 hours of us talking about Mark Miller.
Well, it's my show. All right. Some people love it. Okay. Apex Comics comes in and is talking about Action Hospital. Guys, anybody watching, we're going to have a Q&A section at the end. We're going to go talk about Everyone Is Tulip right now. And then at the end of that, we'll bring in some questions and then we'll go from there. So thank you. Keep your questions and your super chats coming if you're into that kind of thing. Okay. So let's look at Everyone Is Tulip.
Yeah,
guys, I don't know. I've read a book like this before.
Oh, really?
This is really cool. I mean, I'm not a big manga. I've read some manga, right?
Sure, yeah.
I just read The Strange Tale of Panorama Island from Last Gasp.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Oh, cool.
Really, really great. I've got a whole episode. I talk about that one. It's really,
cool.
really excellent. But let's talk about Everyone Is Tulip. So where did this concept come from?
Nicole?
Well, so it comes from, there was a time, at this point, it's about 5 years ago, which is...
God, that's so depressing. Why does comics take so long?
Where I got really into some like YouTube performance art stuff and was watching these videos, and they're so weird and kind of surreal. And, you know, I kind of was like, we should make a book about this world, this stuff. And Dave and I talked about it for probably about 6 months. At the time we were doing a lot of shows, which we normally do, just not in pandemic times. And we went to That Bubble in England, and we spent the entire trip, the week kind of in Leeds, and then we took a week to just travel around in Paris and London. And we spent the whole time talking about what this book could be and what it would mean. And so the book kind of started as like a little bit more like about what the character of the YouTube person would be and about that actual character. And it kind of shifted into a backstory about the people who make those types of movies and what their lives are like. And this kind of idea of fame and viralness and what you have to do to achieve that or sacrifice for it.
Yeah. What I really liked about it is that, you know, throughout the whole thing, I had picked out who's our hero and who's our villain and who is good and who is bad. And by the end, it's not that cut and dry. It's really like the villain really lays the truth out at the end, in my opinion. And our heroine she's just cool with it, pretty much, which I found interesting. I just found like there's the trade-offs, the negatives, the attention, the negativity, the self-consciousness about her wrists and other things.
Hashtag
wrist fatty. Hashtag wrist fatty.
Yeah.
You know, clearly like I don't know if that's a reference clearly to like Megan Fox's thumbs, but that kind of thing where like anybody who gets that kind of positive attention is automatically going to secure some negative attention too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, those are kind of the areas that we were talking about of kind of in any creative field, you know, just in case we didn't set it up or it's not clear. Our book is about a young actress who lives in Los Angeles, who moves there from a shitty podunk town to try and make it in the world of Hollywood, and then ends up inadvertently getting sucked up into this kind of high stakes world of internet performance art, which is a real thing, which is really strange. And
let's talk about this shithole town, because is this supposed to be ironic? Because this is one of the more beautiful images in the book. It's like where she came from actually has a lot of beauty. It has like real people that actually care for her and like the realness of her relationships there, but she cannot get away from it fast enough.
Yes.
Dan, it's like you read the book, man. It's like you understood it.
Yeah,
that's just my interpretation. Did I get it right? Okay.
No, I agree. I mean, I think that there's something about, there's a type of person that no matter what environment you put them in, they're looking for something else.
Because you go from this to this, and which is really the shithole,
right? Yeah. You know, when she first moves to LA, she gets a job at the Hollywood Bagel Emporium, selling people bagels, and like that's her. You know, I'm gonna make a leap to the big city and, you know, sell people bagels. Like, all right, yeah, you got to do what you got to do to make it work, I guess. But yeah, I think Nicole and I are both interested in kind of character studies, and then also formalist aspects of the comics language, which you can see here. This is a thing that we've kind of been playing around with, where it's what if a 9-panel grid had the thing that I think a lot of people that work in comics might not necessarily always pay attention to is the fact that comics, unlike other mediums, needs to work on like 4 different levels. The panel composition needs to work on its own. A single page needs to work on its own as a composition because the eye sees the whole page at once. And then a double page spread needs to work on its own. So you have to write and draw for these 3 different compositions at once. So you're almost like creating a narrative under a microscope while also looking at it standing up, while also looking at it from across the room. And,
and then cohesively, it has to fit into the wider story too. So totally. That higher level.
Yes, absolutely. And so those are things that Nicole and I are very interested in and obsess over and spend long hours being like, well, but what if we did a thing where every panel started with a tiny caption in the left-hand corner? You know, that kind of whatever, the formal aspect of comics.
I'm glad you spent that kind of time on it, because I must have spent at least, 10 seconds looking at it. So I'm really glad that you put all that time and thought into it, because it just goes back to like people look at this and they go, wow, this is cool, great story. And then they go, what'd you do this? This took you a month, right? Or this,
Yeah. And the book itself, I think, is a really
nerds.
Yeah. I wonder what that's a reference to. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a hopefully a very personal story about this interrogating this question of how far are you willing to go to get what you want, which is obviously something that I have personally never been a YouTube performance artist, high fashionista, 20-year-old girl. That is not my life experience.
No?
However, no, it is. I hate to break it to you. It's not my life experience. However,
that's the direction I was thinking of taking this channel. So.
Right. Yeah. But the issues and surrounding kind of cultural ephemera to that experience and the experience of being a creative in any field are shockingly similar. And I think that there's a really interesting level of kind of experiential visual language that Nicole was able to put into the comic that really I don't know that anybody who's not a cartoonist would see it, but I can see looking at the comic of like, oh, you are familiar with these devil's bargains because I know that you've been offered them because I've been offered them with you.
Yeah, this shows a little bit of experience with the LA scene. Nicole, tell me about that. Tell me about, like, there's so many things in here where I love my favorite bits are, this is maybe a Dave question, but I'll ask you both. The party, the conversations, the inane chatter going on at the parties of these places. Is this something that you guys are experienced firsthand and tried to bring to this book?
I used to work at two different, I worked at Trader Joe's in Beverly Hills, and I worked at Erewhon, which is a really fancy schmancy white rich people grocery store, which is right next to the CVS lot, or there's one in Venice too that I worked at. And it is unavoidable. The conversations are just, you sit on the patio trying to eat your lunch, and there's just, every third person is talking about how they're producing some screenplay, and then, everyone's talking about which kale diet they're on. And, we had this product for a while that got taken off the market called raw water, which was unfiltered water. Like, how is that? Like, everyone's on this raw diet. So have you tried the raw water? Like, that's going to be better for you. No, like, people literally got sick because it was unfiltered.
That's kind of the idea, right? Of filtering water.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just like this inane bullshit, which like so many people live kind of in it really feels like a different world than the rest of us live in, where it's like, once you have a certain amount of money, or once you are kind of wrapped up into these communities that have a very specific outlook on the world, or are trying for certain things, like the film community, or, you could say that even about like the comics community has very specific things they talk about. And from the outside, that sounds so strange to anyone else, but there is a specific patina to the conversations in LA that, we were walking we went to a outdoor hike park thing the other day. We're walking around, there's some people around us, and, we pass these people, and the girl goes like, oh, so what's his job? And the guy's like, oh, he's a producer, and blah, blah, blah. And those conversations are just unavoidable. Everybody's a producer. Everybody's a screenwriter. Everyone's trying to get somewhere and do something, almost always in the film industry. And it just is, I don't even know that I necessarily think it's always bad, but it's pervasive.
I mean, it's like, if you go to like, I don't know, if you go to like a Pittsburgh in the 1960s, I mean, everybody's talking about steel mills or whatever, you know what I mean? It's like, that's your regional industry.
And there's something, there's something about that I love too, where it's the thing that I noticed and was a bit of a culture shock when I first moved here was that everybody was trying to do something. I come from a place where it's like, nobody tries to do anything. Everybody just kind of lives their life, and that's kind of it, And then, not that there's anything wrong with that either, but it's just a different mindset. And me as a creative person, I'm always like trying to get the band together. I'm like, let's put on a play. Let's go over here. Let's make a podcast. Let's make a comic. Let's go over there. Let's make a movie. And when constantly, much to the fatigue of people in my immediate circle, probably. But I'm always I'm the leader of the band, right? I might as well be wearing like a Black Parade style marching band outfit right now. When I was a young boy, all I wanted to do was put on a show. And
tell me about this kind of show. Like, tell me about specific inspirations for this, because this feels, especially the clothing, like looking at the clothing, I immediately started thinking about like Japanese design too. And then sure enough, that pays off in the book later. But tell me about the specific inspiration for this piece of performance art. Because frankly, it's silly, right? It's cool. Yeah. It's a pretty girl in goofy clothes saying the same thing over and over again. So is this real?
Yes. 100%. It may or may not, which I'm not going to confirm for legal reasons, be based on an actual person. 100%. Yes.
Got it.
And it's fascinating to see these types of people, what their lives become. There's a Russian version called Doll Vita, and she basically does this where she has an Instagram account where she has these outlandish outfits and these kind of arranged kind of still life tableaus that usually have some sort of pedantic artistic meaning, like consumerism is bad, capitalism is bad, which is like, yes, thank you for this. I'm glad that we were able to arrive at this destination. But there are multiple American ones, and anybody who's familiar with this world will probably instantly know which ones we're referencing or making fun of or homaging.
I see.
But it's a very interesting and bizarre little subculture. And the thing that was so striking to me about it is the fact that it is so expensive. Like, these people have costumes and this ornate reality that they've fabricated, even down to like the e-girl movements, of where it's a less performance art, but people like Belle Delphine, where she has a persona that is this kind of coquettish, bubbly, don't you want to fuck me? I have pink hair and an anime girl sitting in a video game chair, and I stream. And like, she's playing a character. Like, that character is genetically engineered to take your money because you're a lonely nerd. And you're like, oh, I'm going to send you $15 and then maybe you will say my name on the live stream. But it's that same type of person where they make a little pocket universe for themselves based off of a couple core attributes. And it's very fascinating to me how you can do that online. I mean, everybody does it to a certain extent. It's just, what's the Venn diagram of who you actually are and the overlap of that circle, right? Like, you've even done the same thing where you've built this, little pocket universe where it's you and comic book creators and a bunch of books, because that's what you value. That's what you place cultural emphasis on.
Yeah, right.
And I've done the same thing. My pocket universe is probably pretty similar to yours. It's like a bunch of old comics and like dead white guys and Jews that nobody gives a shit about. But, I'm out here being like, Siegel and Schuster were robbed. And it's like,
well, I mean, and the truth of it is, everyone is doing it like you're saying, but like, I don't know. There's not many people that like comics the way the three of us probably do.
Right.
But there's a lot of people that just like looking at pretty things and don't go much deeper than a surface banal observation. Yep. And this is just hypercharged candy for them, right? Now that we've boiled these things down into these like posts, snippet, a couple seconds, you don't have to even invest a lot of time in something. You don't have to. Nobody's spending an hour. Nobody's watching this whole video. Sorry, not many.
Yeah. Yeah.
But people are going to pop in and maybe watch a clip or clip to the thing that they want. And then with these little tiny social media bursts, they add up. If you just look at the amount of time these people are spending on them over the course of a year, it's tremendous amounts of attention, which equals money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, these were all themes that we were discussing and figuring out and talking about and kind of messing around with when we first started putting this together. And I think actually this book is probably the closest to what we had discussed. You know what I mean? Like we kind of like had a vision for what the book would be and then made that, and it didn't actually evolve. I mean, it did evolve because of the natural creative process, but it didn't like, there are other things we've made where it's like, oh, it's going to be this. And then when it finishes, it's just like over here. It's almost a completely separate entity. And this book, I feel like, is actually pretty fidelitous to our initial intentions and pretty succinct, and it really kind of examines the things that we were examining in our conversations when we were at Thought Bubble, whatever it was, 75 years ago.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, it's shifted a bit. It was initially going to be trippier and more kind of like Perfect Blue, where it's this like other reality, which in a way it is still that. All of the scenes where our main character, Becca, is Tulip, which is her persona, it's supposed to feel like a different reality. But the initial idea was going to be a little more like she loses herself in kind of like this weird thing and has maybe a mental break. And it didn't get quite that far because we ended up leaning more towards this idea of, fame and what you would do for it, and those kind of moral questions around that. But, it's pretty close to what we had planned. And I didn't mention before, but we brought a colorist in for this. I had done some sample pages, but I am not someone who can color 160 pages of a book. It would take me years. So we had our colorist, Ellie Hall, come in, and she just did an amazing job and really made that idea of the two different realities come to life with the palettes that she's using on those Tulip pages versus the real life pages versus the flashback pages. And it really would be a completely different book without her.
Yeah, the purple Arizona palette when we go into the flashbacks is great because it's really the great signifier exactly of, that you've done a flashback, you're in a different time. Like that's really critical to the storytelling, and that's not always the case with coloring.
Yeah.
Ellie Hall did a great job. Yeah.
Good job, Ellie.
Yay, Ellie.
Tell me about the relationship between Tulip, Becca, and her roommate. Her friend, whatever.
Yeah, Eve.
They're supportive. They love and support each other. They're jealous of each other. They're not quite backstabbed. Just tell me about it, Nicole.
Yeah, I mean, it's this idea of you can be a friend and you can be supportive, and still, when someone gets the thing that you want, feel bad about it. Yeah. And in a industry that is so kind of cutthroat, where if you are not fighting for your opportunity, you're not going to get it.
Well, literally, it is a zero-sum game acting, right? Like you get the part, and 100 other people do not get the part.
Exactly. So in order to make that happen, you can't kind of just go to auditions and fuck around and hope for the best. You have to be actively out there making your connections, going to the right parties, talking to the right people, doing the stuff. And, I think an industry like that can turn really toxic really quickly. I'm not saying it always does. There's obviously very nice people in the industry, but it's very easy to only look out for yourself when you have that mindset of, if I don't get this, or if someone else gets it, I won't, and find ways to weasel yourself into a project or an industry or do those kinds of things. And it kind of taints relationships, Yeah,
right.
And
tell me about this moment. This seems significant to me for some reason. Like, what is the what are we trying to convey here? To me, she's kind of bought in. This is her transformational moment.
Yeah. So Becca this is after a party where they go to this party with Stanley, who's the kind of producer and director of these videos that she's doing. And on set, he asks her to go to this party, like, and as kind of a date. And Becca doesn't know how to feel with it. She takes Eve with her. And when they get there, he calls her Tulip instead of Becca and expects her to act in character as Tulip. And she doesn't know how to feel about it. And, you know, they leave the party and he kind of breaks that down and talks to her as a real person and talks about, you know, LA and what it takes to be an actor there and being in the scene. And that is her kind of acceptance of this idea of like, oh no, I have to do this. Yes. Eve says, play the game. You have to play the game. And Becca is kind of naive and doesn't want to play into these things. She feels weird about it. And that's her kind of going, okay, I have to do this fully or not at all.
It's also the first time that the, oh my gosh, what's the director's name? McGee or whatever. What's his?
Stanley.
Oh yeah, his like pseudonym. Yeah, Parallax.
Yeah,
XL.
Paradox XL.
Yeah.
This is the moment too where throughout the whole thing he had been just purely. It's like art has to suffer. Every artistic cliche, right? It's like it's my art and my vision and my art, and then he breaks it down right here. It's like it's who you know, it's who you hang out with, really exposing it to Tulip, who probably kind of felt that, and then right now it's laid bare to her, and this is her Incredible Hulk moment as she's hit by the gamma bomb of truth.
Right. Yeah.
And she emerges, and she's Tulip now at this point, right? Great. And I loved the structure of the story and the way you set it up in the moments and stuff. Really good, really good stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, there was a lot of back and forth too, where like I feel like the current era of comics that we live in, everybody thinks the writer is king and the writer has this vision and the artist is secondary. Yeah, and that's just not true. Like that's an opinion made by somebody or espoused by someone who doesn't understand how comics works. And this story specifically is a perfect example of that, in that, you know, me saying, oh yeah, and then there's a 9-panel grid and then there's like phones in the grid. You give that to any artist that's not Nicole, and I don't know that you get this. Like, this is just it. And also she was involved in crafting the story and kind of developing the story initially, and then I did some drafts of the scripts, and she was just like, you know, this isn't working, or this over here, just we need a bigger character moment here, or whatever. And there's a thing at the end that I won't spoil, but there's a thing at the end that was directly her idea that I had not even considered, and is like one of the like, I don't know that the story works without that specific moment. And that's how you know when the engine for the machine is working well, when the artist is bringing ideas that you had no preconceived notion of, that then they make the story. They pull everything together and just create these little synecdoches, these little moments that are like, oh, that's what the book is. That's it right there.
Well, I'll be honest that there's a reason I put Nicole's name first on this thing, Dave.
Hell yeah.
and it's but not to knock you, because I've seen your art now too, and you're clearly a cartoonist yourself, so that really helps in what you're laying down. But I've always said this: if you compare a comic to a movie, you know, you've got a screenwriter and you've got a comic screenwriter, right? And they're the same. But then what is the artist? The artist is not the director. The artist is the lighting director and the camera director. The artist is the actor and the acting coach. The artist is everything to this thing. And you could take the greatest Davy Baker script in the world and, like you said, put it in the hands of someone with a different sensibility. It's going to be a whole different animal.
Yeah, completely. And I think also the way Nicole imbued Becca with a lot of empathy as a cartoonist. You can feel it in the drawings because she like, look at that drawing right there.
Yeah,
like that's adorable. Like I love that girl.
Great.
I instantly am like, oh, you're just the cutest.
Yeah.
I love you.
Yeah. You're real too.
Yeah, you're
taking
real.
a shit. So
exactly.
you're real.
Yeah. And like, I think it would be very easy to not like Becca as a character because she's
not particularly sympathetic.
No, she's not a nice person, really.
Yeah, not to mention her wrists. I
know.
want to bring it up.
Wrist fatty.
I didn't want to bring that up, but
wrist fatty.
It's very hateable wrists, you know.
Yeah, so many hateable wrists. Yeah. But yeah, I think that the book itself.
This poor schmuck. Jack.
Poor Jack.
Yeah, poor Jack. And I'm glad that at the end you sort of implied he had some, you know, he got over this, and I think you implied he's got a family, and if I'm reading, and you weren't ham-fisted with that. It was just the art told us that he didn't have to tell her, oh, I found a new love, I'm over you, blah blah blah. It's all spoken in the page. It's just very thoughtful. I loved it.
Yeah,
I was talking to Nicole, Dave. Sorry.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, of course.
I'm just messing with you guys because, man, you guys are a team. This is something that works on a lot of different levels, and it's clear that, like, Dave, your knowledge of how to pace a story and write for it just played hand in hand with Nicole's tremendous experience as a cartoonist.
We also, because we've been working together so long, we know each other's sensibilities really well. So, like, Dave writes such a broad range of comics and topics and screenplays and all kinds of things. He has really diverse interests. I have more specific interests. And there's something about when we work together where he knows what I want to draw and how I want to tell a story. And when he writes something, I know what he wants it to look like because we've spent the last 7 years hanging out. Like, and we spend a lot of time together, and we talk about comics constantly, and we talk about which ones we like and which ones we don't, and what worked and what didn't, and, you know, all these kinds of things. So there is something about knowing your collaborator really well that just makes the process so seamless and so easy. And it's not like we never have disagreements or he never has notes on anything I've done or anything like that, but we almost never really have a large disagreement about something.
Yeah, it's always weird stuff. Like, I'm always like, yeah, that hand is kind of, it's not how I was picturing the hand. It's never like this scene is wrong or this, you know, this composition as a whole is just fucked up. It's never stuff like that. It's always, and vice versa for her, story wise. She's never like, oh, this tone is just bullshit. Like, what is this?
I really like this picture for the conscious use of the thigh gap.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a thing that's kind of wrapped up in this idea of social media criticism and you know what it takes to look and be famous in our current society is like you are expected to look a certain way, and that has really a negative effects on people's physical health, like mental health, physical health. You know, there's some YouTubers that I watch who, when they started, were fairly normal looking people, and now they are just emaciated, you know, and like, I don't know what their life is like. I don't know what's going on with their bodies or like, you know.
Sorry, Nicole, I'm working on it. Okay. I got body issues. Really...
but you know, you see that and you see these people change. And, you know, when you see movie stars do it, it's usually because they have a personal chef and like a trainer that trains them every day. But when it's YouTubers, you're kind of like, oh, you're just not eating. That's concerning to me.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Give me them dollars.
Oh man, give me them dollars is one of my favorite fake businesses. We have like all of these fake businesses throughout our books because they all take place in the same universe. And my two favorite are Gimme Dem Dollars and Cheapo Foot Boats. And Cheapo Foot Boats.
Shiver Me Burgers.
Shiver Me Burgers is like Shiver Me Burgers is the mainstream version of it though. Shiver Me Burgers is like a shitty pirate themed McDonald's that's through all of our books. but cheapo.
Tell me about
photos-
soft food. What is soft? There's a couple references to soft food that I felt like it was an inside joke or something that I missed. I don't know.
No, I think it's like have you ever had White Castle?
Yes.
Soft food. Their food is just kind of soft. It's like weird and like mushy. Like that's the taste of
It's extremely palatable. You can just kind of like just cram it in.
Yes.
Fill your esophagus.
You don't even have to chew. You can just kind of like
Slides right down.
slide down your throat. It's the equivalent of like when those hot dog eater guys like dip their hot dogs in water to just swallow them whole. It's like that.
Speaking of disgusting. Okay, so this is where we go. So when evil spelled backwards is live. Yeah. So to me, it was like this was the telegraph that dude is evil, like that XL dude, and it's really just kind of another kind of meaningless cliche for her to mouth, or did it mean something more?
That's the thing with Stanley, right? Is that every platitude that he gives her is kind of meaningless. He wants it to be this big epic statement on art and the world, but he's not that deep, you know?
Right.
Yeah. And also, you know, if you're not familiar, that's a literal quote from Anton LaVey, which is, I don't want to say too much because we're getting towards the end of the book, so I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a theme with all of these things that Stanley says, all these platitudes that he espouses.
Yeah, right. And he ends up, you know, really, you want to hate this guy, but I think in the end, I don't know. I don't hate him as much as I just sort of like, I just kind of pity him a little bit for just a lack of true artistic ambition and just like a seeking of the trappings of that lifestyle, I guess.
Yeah, I think that there's, you know, when I first moved to LA, he's inspired by a couple things, but one of the underpinnings for his character comes directly from this person that I was at a party with. I did not know them. I met them the week I moved to Los Angeles. So I was still a bit innocent and didn't really understand how things worked here. And I ended up at this party in the Hollywood Hills. And it was me and a couple of my friends, and I was standing on this big overlook, looking out onto LA. And I was like, you know, this like back patio looking out onto LA. And this was a kind of B-list celebrity's home, who, for the sake of this story, will remain nameless. But I was on cloud 9. I was like, I've been here a week, and I'm at this person's party. What is happening? So I'm just like, stars in my eyes, like, this is gonna be crazy great. Like, I can't believe that this is happening. And this woman wearing a cowboy hat walks up next to me, and I'm like, oh, hey, nice hat. And that started us talking and shooting the shit. And I was low-key internally being like, why the fuck are you wearing that hat? That's so stupid looking. But we started talking, and I was like, so what do you do? And she was like, oh, I'm a producer. And I was like, oh, that's great. What movies have you produced? And she turned bright red and was just kind of like, well, I'm a producer. I'm like, yeah, I know, but like, what have you produced?
Yeah, right.
And she couldn't say, she didn't have the humility to be able to say, oh, you know, I'm just starting out. I'm working on some short films. I'm doing this, whatever the normal person thing to say there was. She couldn't do it. And she was like, she had this like wall of kayfabe where she was trying to convince me that she was a producer with a capital P, but just blatantly, obviously not one. Right. And it was this weird, like, oh, people here don't want to actually do the stuff. They want to have the title of having done the thing.
They want to be it, not become it.
Right? Yeah. And it was such an eye-opening experience for me of like, oh, interesting. Like, I would never call myself whatever. I would never call myself a grip, having never moved stuff on a fucking set. You know what I mean? Like, I just would never do that because that's not who I am. And
what I love about this dude too, though, is his every instinct is wrong. Right? Like right here. He's like, this won't work. Let's just put it out. And then this is his biggest viral hit of the entire thing, right? He is completely off base. It's all luck that he's gotten to where he's got now. And probably has more to do with Tulip, honestly, and her beauty and her physical attributes and whatever else than it does anything he's bringing to the table.
Well, there is not parallels about how people see comics writers versus artists in that.
I have so much to say, but the book is not out, so I'm going to.
Well, I'm going to keep going through. I'm not trying to try not to spoil anything, but I do want to like just flow through the pages here and keep going. Because I think it's a great accomplishment. What's telling to me why this is so good is because it was so readable in digital form. Like digital comics stink. I hate them. I hate PDFs. I read this whole thing sitting in front of my computer. The color palette actually works really well on the computer screen because the computer, it's light shooting right into your eyeballs, right? And so it's like this muted kind of duller pastelish color palette works great.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's not either of you guys either. That's kudos to Ellie.
Ellie. Ellie. Yeah, completely.
Quit hogging the credit. You writers, dude. You comic writers. Do you think? Nah, I'm just kidding. Come on.
Yeah. No, it's it's a weird thing, man. It's a weird thing making comics and then having it exist digitally for like a year. Like we're also right now we're serializing it on everyoneistulip.com.
Oh yeah, right.
So anybody that wants to read it, they can read it week to week. 3 pages go up a week. The book itself comes out in June. I think bookstore market is June 29. I think direct market is like June 17 or 16, something along those lines.
Any predictions on how this will sell in the book trade versus the direct market?
I'm very curious to see that. I know Dark Horse has been very excited about it, and I know they have specifically been using Tulip almost as a pilot program, releasing stuff directly to the book trade. This is not coming out as a miniseries and then being collected. It's a straight graphic novel.
There is no reason to put this out as a pamphlet format miniseries. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It would just be a delay until the proper format of OGN or of full-length graphic novel.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm excited about the fact that so often you get one shot at people. People buy the first issue of a thing, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that was great," and then just because life happens and because comics is an archaic system run by business tycoons from the 1980s, like it's impossible to buy comics. So that's all you ever get is that one shot at that first issue, right? And like
I'm just looking at our true hero here, by the way.
Oh, Jack, our boy Jack, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't grip people in those first 22 pages, in the serialized system, then you're kind of screwed. When it's like that's not really enough a lot of time to tell, especially a story paced like this. If you're doing an action book, if you're doing a horror book, sure, you can probably pull people in quickly, but when you're doing something that's a little bit slower paced, character driven, and takes time to develop those things, it's almost impossible to really do that in 22 pages in a way that's going to make people come back immediately.
Oh yeah. But I love that. Yeah, Dave.
I was just going to say, and also nobody in our comic gets punched. Like it's just sad people being sad and like the internet. Like, and if that
was the only thing I was going to add was it needed a little more punching.
Yeah.
Yeah. What if there was just a big fight scene where they just duke it out?
I mean, it could have been at the end, but
yeah, there could have been. Yeah.
Well, there's plenty of punchable people in this.
Absolutely.
I'll say that.
Yes, absolutely.
And our heroine is maybe among them in some. When she tells Jack, "I don't think I ever loved you," ouch.
Yeah. Agreed.
Ouch. But guys, okay, I'm gonna skim through here because I don't want to give it away. The one part I haven't read yet is this. I tried to read it, but I ran out of time.
Oh, no worries.
Before Dave popped on the call. You want to talk about a little bit, just quickly, what this is?
Yeah, sure. So Nicole and I like making kind of end essay, almost kind of behind the scene feature prose pieces for all of our books. So they all have some version of a kind of coda that is usually me, sometimes us, talking about the process of making the book, what we were thinking about, generally what we're hoping the feeling is. It varies from book to book, but we kind of use these end pieces almost kind of as markers for where we are at the times the book comes out, because sometimes you forget, sometimes it doesn't register the book, especially because these things take so long to make and then they take so long to be released, and it's just hard to chart that change and growth and over the course of years sometimes. And so these end pieces, we've gotten a lot of really nice feedback over the years of people saying like, oh, I feel like that was an added value, almost kind of like a director's commentary for a movie DVD or something like that. And this one specifically is designed to look like a fashion magazine, which I think is so funny and great. The Dark Horse design department did a wonderful job. These character sketches by Nicole are just amazing. So this is just kind of the story is over, but we're going to hang out and do almost like a little mini Q&A where we're going to talk about the book and what it means to us and specifically where we are in the course of being cartoonists, because it is a weird journey.
Really awesome. I love the process stuff in here, just because, who's going to read this book? Let's be real. Like the kid that's going to read this book, the 16-year-old girl, maybe the 15-year-old boy, whoever it is, who this is kind of right in their wheelhouse of today, 21st century. They're going to read this thing, and 1 out of 1,000 of them is going to be like, I want to make some of these myself. And they're going to look at this stuff. And it's awesome. They're going to come to this channel. They're going to watch this amazing interview.
Mm-hmm.
And then what? And then how do I make money on the deal? Oh, yeah, that's right. They'll subscribe. They'll like and subscribe to this video, and then everything will be great. Okay. I'm going to remove this from the screen. Guys, you did an amazing work here. Dave, I just saw you sort of reached out on Facebook, like what? You went on this group, then I'm a part of it. You're like, what comic book shows should I go on? What are your favorite podcasts? And no one recommended my show. Except me. I'm like, I don't know. I'll do it. Are you glad you did? Was this fun for you guys?
Oh yeah. Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Will you come back again and promote more of your work?
Hell yeah.
We'll definitely do that.
Yeah, we'll have to.
So what's next?
We gotta do a round table where it's you and me and Pat Mills. Man, I got questions for Pat Mills. I'm trying to learn about fucking Nemesis the Warlock, bro. I'm trying to learn about fucking Requiem. Man, come on.
Okay.
Come on, Dan,
we're bringing him back. We're bringing Pat back. Maybe I'll bring you back too. We could do it. I want to try and mix up more guests. I want to be on more podcasts. I want to have more people on this show and just spread the positive message about the kind of everybody's talking about whatever garbage is coming out from Marvel and DC. Garbage. Nobody is talking about this. There's such an explosion of work like this that's happening right now, but there's so much of it that it's really hard to know what to look at and what you should read and not. So
look, all I got to say on that front is the only good Marvel or DC comic is Shadow of the Batgirl. Hey,
nice. Okay, well, guys,
that is a joke. That is a joke.
Yeah, please hire Dave for something else. He's not burning any bridges here. Guys, I just want to say fantastic. I was blown away. I didn't know what to expect when I read it. I had never read any of either of your works before, and now I'm going to read them all.
Oh, thank you. Wow, that's a very high compliment. Thank you.
Well, because you're going to send them to me for free, right?
Of course. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time, guys. I got to do the outro and the closing credits and the secret comic book cameo. So stick around if you have time. If you got to go, I understand. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
See y'all. Oh, and thank you. Still 5 people watching right now. That's not too bad for an hour-long indie discussion. We had 10, 15 people on this thing watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I didn't really do the Q&A that I planned to do, but I flashed as many as the of the comments as I could. Everyone watching, hit the like button and subscribe to Comic Book News. Thank you, Heroin Berg. Always hyping, always promoting. Good work. Go check out Heroin Berg's comics and media empire as well. Thank you for watching. Make sure to come back when? This Thursday. We're going to talk about who we're going to talk with. Oh, man, Brian Hitch. Okay, these guys might not like Mark Millar. All right, Davey. All right, whatever. The Ultimates was badass, so it was a great comic. I love it. We're going to talk about it. I think there's not many more influential Marvel comics in the 21st century than this particular comic. We'll talk about why. We'll also talk about the Batman's Grave, and we'll talk about Brian's work on Hawkman and recent stuff. And he just started picking up a brush recently and is inking his own work, and is putting things out on a super timely basis without sacrificing the quality. I want to see how he does that. Cheap, fast, and good. You got to pick 2. Somehow he's nailing all 3, right? So we're going to grill Brian Hitch. And then the following week, we're going to bring in Mark Evanier. This is a guy who I've been wanting to talk to forever. I've been reading his blog for 20 years. I've been reading his comics for even longer. If you watch the Garfield cartoon, he wrote it. He directs it. If you've read Gru the Wanderer, he wrote it. If you've read, I don't even know. There's so many things. I can't even name them all. We'll talk with him about just like a smidgen of those things and what it's like to work with guys like Sergio Aragonés and who else has he worked with? He worked with Jack Kirby, and he's worked with, I know he worked with Jim Shooter. I know he's worked with Stan Lee. I know he's worked with so many different amazing people in our industry. I can't wait to talk to him. And I can't wait to talk to you again. And when are we going to do that? I think you know when. I think you know that the time when we do it is one that's currently designated as next time.